Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Anarchist podcast. It's episode number 11. And in this podcast, we're going to be taking a look at religion. And I recently was reading an article that come across my desk. And it said that an ever-growing number of Americans and people in general around the world, but in particular Western nations, and in particular millennials and those under 18, are growing more and more less religious and having less faith in any kind of the major established religions. So that's what this podcast is going to be about today. Religion and the disbelief in it, and where I believe all this stems from, and how I believe it's inevitable that probably in the next 50 or so years, beliefs in religions will be almost non-existent. So it's going to be an interesting episode. I'm not sure how long it's going to go. It may be a little bit shorter than other episodes. It is the day after Christmas, and there are some things I got to do, so we'll see how long this podcast goes. But make sure if you enjoy the podcast, that you share this message, get it out there on social media platforms. Give the video a thumbs up, share it across social media platforms so it'll get more views and these ideas will get expressed. And we can hopefully try to rein back all the tyranny on this planet and get back to some freedom and the basics way of life where people can live unmolested and be free to do what they want. As long as, of course, they're not violating the non-aggression principle and hurting anyone. And that's what this podcast aims to do, is try to get more individual freedom, maximize individual freedom across the globe. But let's get into the content of today. So as I was saying, I was reading an article, and it was saying that millennials and the generation under that, so this would be 18 to 34 and 30 and 18 and 0 to 18. So the youth of the today are becoming more and more less religious. And to me, anyone who looks at the facts and analyzes the situation, this is pretty much inevitable to happen. And it all stems to we are now living in an era where information is readily available. So before, when we reel back the times of history, and we go back, there's a certain point of time where we used to believe in sky gods, that gods existed above the clouds because we didn't know what existed above the clouds. People used to assume that thunder was the gods being angry. If the rains didn't come, the gods were punishing you. You know, they couldn't understand weather anomalies such as storms and volcanic eruptions and stuff. These things were always blamed on the gods and stuff back then. And it was a lack of understanding of the sciences and how the universe and our planet works and our biology and all that kind of things. We didn't know what we know now. We didn't know Darwinism. We didn't know evolution and all these things. So we put these we come up with these concepts, and we tried hard with our monkey brains to grapple with the concept of how we got here and how things existed and how these elements in the world affected us. But then, of course, once we launched the first satellite above the clouds, or the first Wright brothers flew his plane up into the clouds and everything, we breached the atmosphere and we realized that, holy shit, Zeus isn't here. And then, of course, that pushed the concept of God into, well, maybe he's at somewhere else in the universe. And then, of course, we got the Hubble telescope, started blasting and taking pictures of Hubble deep space field and all these galaxies, tracking and analyzing the cosmos and taking a picture frame of the cosmos and looking and understanding it all the way to a few milliseconds of the Big Bang now. Today, scientists can 100% explain pretty much everything after a few seconds of the Big Bang. And with that research, with that science and breakthroughs in science, there's been no God found. There's been no God hiding behind, like I said, the clouds. And then we looked above the clouds, he wasn't there. Well, let's check Jupiter. Well, God's not hiding behind Jupiter. Well, he's not in the cosmos, because now we can measure and look around the cosmos. We don't see any omnipotent being controlling everything in the universe. We don't see him. So what did religion have to do? Well, they had to push it into paranormal. Well, he's here. He's non-existent. He's everything, and they had to make it into this. What am I trying to say? What's the word? Having a moment here. Supernatural. There it is. They pushed him into a supernatural realm where scientists can't touch him. And of course, they just done that just as just as we used to. Once we breached the atmosphere, well, then we didn't believe that Zeus was above the clouds. Well, same thing with religious fanatics now. Well, God is supernatural, so you can't measure him. He's before time. Blah 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 blah. But anyone who studies sciences and studies evolution, all these things, and myself, who's just an amateur who studies these things in my own free time, and I started to question these beliefs because I was raised as a Christian, and then you start to ask yourself, well, if there is a God, and this is what scientists ask themselves, let's just say there is a God, and let's give them the benefit of the doubt that he is out there somewhere, then he himself then has to be explained. So scientists would then have to try to explain how God got there, and if he was always there, So when you put a supernatural being as the creator of all of us, it kind of creates more questions and problems for scientists than the simple answer that we could have possibly birthed from nothing. Other things such as the multiverse theory and all these other things. And when you talk to a religious person or someone who's not well versed in the studies of science, and you tell them the concept that we could have very well came from nothing, that is almost like they're like, no, it's impossible. How could you create something from nothing? But isn't that exactly what a religious person believes, that God created everything from nothing? So it's not too far-fetched and hard to believe. And what I am predicting in the next 50 years or so is the shedding of the belief in governments and authority in general. We're going to go through this beautiful awakening, I feel, in the next probably 50 or so years. If I could sit up above the clouds and analyze us, get in a time machine and think, well, we're headed down, where we're going to be at in 50 years, it's probably going to be a vast majority of the planet is atheist, science-based beliefs, and there will be the few occasional pockets of people who believe in this thing, this ridiculous belief called religion. And this is, to me, easy to understand because it all comes down to access to information is more readily available. Like I said, before in the days, it was only the high priestess or the smart people who would read the books and who are articulate and who would study the cosmos back then, where most of the population was illiterate or didn't have access because they weren't wealthy enough. Back in the days, education and access to these type of things were not readily available to the normal civilians. The power and the elite class kept the knowledge of our existence and used this knowledge as an advantage to use to enslave the populations. It was very smart for the rich back in the day to establish religions to keep control over their populations. Because if your populations are living in tyrannical shithole societies where they're run by megalomaniacal dictators and all these other situations like we've seen throughout history, whether it's through the Roman Republic and all these other massive advanced societies that were run by dictatorships in a sense, well, you had to teach those people who are living in these terrible living conditions and in poverty, while their kings and while the elite class would live in giant pyramids and colosseums and all these wonderful structures. They would live in these wealthy lifestyle while the population would live in turmoil. Well, they had to preach religion because it was a way to tell the poor that, hey, in this lifetime you may be being fucked over and screwed and living in shitty conditions, but don't worry, there's a paradise after this, and all will be repaid, and all the suffering that you suffer in this time it'll be for a reason. The suffering now is so that you can live an eternity in paradise And these rich people who are enslaving you and taking advantage of the populations by enslaving them and stealing their money so they can be wealthy and remain in control, well, don't worry, they're evil, so they'll pay in the afterlife. Just okay, let them rule you and you suffer now. So I believe religion was created as a form of control, a way to keep the people from revolting against the wealthy class, the controlling class. And when I say wealthy class, I don't try to mean like as if wealth is a bad thing. It just, throughout history, wealth has been used as a form of control. So that's all in a sense. And a lot of wealth has been accumulated through corruption and crony capitalism. So I don't want to mix the two. Capitalism is good. Two individuals who want to exchange goods, that's fine with me. Capitalism is just, you have a pencil, I have $5. I want the pencil, you want the $5. We both see value in the exchange. We both benefit, we feel. Boom, capitalism. Nothing wrong with that. But what I do have a problem with, which is crony capitalism, and it's using force and violence to pass regulations and rules and stuff like that to steal from people and taxation and this stuff, that is not capitalism. This shouldn't be mixed up for capitalism. But back on point here, what I'm getting at. So, as I was saying, religion is being shed. I myself, I think it was probably about 5-6 years ago that I come out like 100%. I don't believe in this fucking religion. Doesn't make sense to me. Too many contradictions in the Bible. But for the longest time, when I was raised as a Christian, I believed in this shit. Believed in this magic stuff. Even though I had a lot of questions as a youth, and anytime I asked certain things in churches and stuff, like, well, if God is all powerful and is such a wonderful creator, why would he design us to be sinful and to do these acts that will result in an eternity of hell, an eternity of suffering? Why would he design us to be flawful, to have flaws, to make mistakes, to sin, only to punish us for the way he designed us? That didn't make sense to me. At a very young age, I realized these massive contradictions in religious faith. But anytime I questioned any older people around me, don't, you're not supposed to question that stuff. It's faith. You got to have faith. It's all about faith. And then I come and grew up and become a young adult, and I realized that, no, you don't believe things on faith. You believe things on facts and science and logic and stuff like that, using the scientific method to determine if it's real or not. So, and like I said, all this is a result of knowledge and information being more readily available with the internet. The internet is key. The internet now enables people who wouldn't normally have access to these informations, who would normally just be going to church and only being taught that. Well, now they can actually Google these questions that the older people don't want to answer and come to their own answers. And that's what I did. And then, of course, you could always watch lectures of Lawrence Krauss and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Dawkins and all these guys break down the cosmos and our existence. And then, once you start delving into that stuff, religion starts falling at the wayside. But I think this is an inevitability. Just like we've shedded these archaic worshipping sun gods and everything like this, and worshipping Zeus above the clouds, and then, oh, well, he's somewhere in the universe, to, oh, now he's supernatural, to now we're into the evolution point where it's inevitable that very soon religion will fall to the wayside. And this is also why I feel the people who are like people like popes and people who are in government and people who rely on these religious agencies to implement controls and to keep the faith and to keep people enslaved to these ideas, I believe all of them realize that the information is destroying this belief system, and is why I feel we're going to see this year will be the push to ban guns and the internet hardcore. Now, they've always been trying to ban guns and the internet, but I feel there's going to be ramping up of those two in this year. Watch me. We're coming in almost here to the new year. It's the day after Christmas. 2016 is just around the corner. Mark this down in your calendars. Matt Hunter said 2016 will be the year of the gun grab, and will be the year of trying to shut down the internet, because the elites have now realized that when you give youth access to the internet, you give them access to choose which information they want to learn. For the longest time, we've learned things through either school or through TV and stuff like that. For a long time before the internet, you mainly watched TV, or you went outside and played, and you read the newspaper. There was only these forms of getting information. And what I've learned about the TV is they only show you what you want to see. When you flick on the channel and you go through that TV guide, you have a limited number of things you can watch, and you make a calculated decision out of those however many channels you get in the guide of what you're going to watch by what's on at the time. Now you may find a show, oh, I want to watch that, so I'll click that on. But the difference between watching TV and watching stuff on the internet is when you go on the internet, you don't ask the question, what's on the TV guide, what can I watch? When you watch stuff on the internet, which is what majority of the youth are doing today, and where they're getting a lot of their information and media from, is the internet, not TV. When you watch stuff on the internet, you can watch whatever you want, not what is just available on the TV guide. And I find myself, now that I've given up cable television for about 4 or 5 years now, I haven't watched it in forever. Well, now when I go on the internet to watch my things, I watch only what I watch. I watch politics, I watch news, I watch lectures of Lawrence Krauss and the universe and the cosmos and all these things that interest me, my passions. And I get to study things that I want to study and I'm interested in. And having that access to the internet gives me the ability to research concepts and ideas without no monopoly on that information where the TV has. And for the longest time, that's what's used to control us. And why the elites absolutely hate the internet. Because the internet's existed literally is churning out more atheists and anarchists faster than these people like. Because when you watch CNN all the time, and you watch only cable news channels, then of course they're only pushing pro-government propaganda, pro-war, whatever channel you're watching, pro-left, pro-right, whatever channel you're watching. But when you go on the internet, you can access all that. You can watch stuff about the lefties, you can watch stuff about the righties, you can watch stuff that contradicts each other, the anarchist opinion. So it makes information more available, and it makes it so people don't have that monopoly on information that the TV has. Now, when you look at these studies where it's the millennials and younger are becoming more and more atheists and more less susceptible to government and corruption and authority figures, and you see that the older people, the generations before that, the old folks, well, they're still clinging to their archaic religion. And of course that makes sense because they're not on the internet like the youth are today. I know my grandparents, they still watch cable and satellite shitty ass TV. I try to explain them all the time. You can watch all this stuff online. Oh, I can't understand the computer. I'm too old and I don't know how to work this. So they choose to be ignorant of the technology that they have in front of them. And because of that, their minds are set in these square boxes where they're only being fed information that they want to be fed through the news or through the cable television. And I am really excited for these older generations to die off. I know that may seem terrible. I know that some of them may be your grandparents. I know some of them are my grandparents. But I'm sick of their mindsets. I'm sick of their old way of thinking. They live in the era before the internet, before the birth of knowledge. And they still believe in these ridiculous concepts like government, that it's okay to steal people's shit to provide services instead of just letting people buy the services and having competition in the market, like the free market. Well, they still believe that government's good, free market bad. Meanwhile, free market is the solution. Government's why we got a lot of the problems we have today. And of course, they still believe in these stupid-ass archaic religions. So I'm hoping that we survive this transition Because I feel when I look out in society right now, what I'm seeing is the old fucks clinging on to their old rigid ideals, their old way of life. Well, the youth today who are born in this technological era of the internet, of knowledge, we are shedding all these archaic concepts, and we're moving at an exponential rate than these older generations who are being left behind. They can't stay with the times. Like my grandmother says, I don't know how to work the internet. Well, maybe you should fucking learn, because that's the future. But no, they wanna cling and stick in their own ways. But that's fine. But what I'm hoping we see is they peacefully die the fuck out. And the same way their forms of control over the populations, whether it's through government, religion, will die out as well. And that's what I'm hoping to see. Now, now it could not go that way. There could be mass resistance against this, and we are seeing it with the Muslims and stuff clinging on to their Muslim religion. And people are like, oh, let the Muslims... Listen, screw Muslims, screw Christians. You people believe in a false prophet. You believe in an imaginary God. Your God is just as believable as leprechauns and unicorns. There's just as much evidence to back up the claim that your God's real as there is that unicorns are real. So fuck Muslims, fuck religious people, because anyone who believes in these concepts of religion, to me, I feel they're a lack of intelligence. I feel anyone that's got any iota of a high IQ or any kind of rational thinking brain and any kind of measure of intelligence can't help but to shed belief systems like religion. And a lot of studies have shown that people with higher IQs tend to be less religious. So I see us ending up in this clash of civilizations, the old way of thinking versus the information new way of thinking. And they want to cling to their views while we want to push into the future and innovate and leave these archaic belief systems behind so we can focus on the reality. Because I tell you what, religion, why I hate it so much and why I'm an advocate person that's outspoken against it, I guess I would call myself a militant atheist. Because I feel religion holds us all down. It stifles innovation. It stifles evolution and where we could possibly be at in human evolution if we were getting rid of the stupid-ass religion thing. Because if you wake up tomorrow and realize, like I did a couple years ago, that, hey, there is no God, that when I die, there's a good chance that maggots will eat my body, and that's it. There's no afterlife. Well, that really makes you start to question your morality. You really start to live a different lifestyle. You really start to wonder, oh shit, maybe I should be a little bit more careful in how I live. Maybe I should take better care of my health, because there's no beautiful paradise life afterwards where I get to hang out with my family and friends. This is it. This is my one opportunity, my one shot. And that's empowering for an atheist to come to that conclusion. Because what that will drive in the human race is once we get a planet full of atheists, they will have to come to the conclusion that, hey, time on this planet is finite, and if we don't start building the technologies to extend that time or extend it to the point of immortality, you're looking forward to being eaten by maggots in the ground. And having that I know why people are religious. It's a sense of security. It feels very good to lay your head on the pillow every night thinking that even if I clock out tonight or tomorrow or die in a car accident or die of a disease, or my loved one who's dying right now of a disease, that don't worry, this isn't the end for them. It's very comforting believing in that. But that comfort makes us weak, and it makes us not want to strive, to fight, to cling to our human existence, and to cling and cherish every breath we take, knowing that it is the last, and there probably isn't an afterlife. Now, can I say any of this without 100% fact? Can I honestly say that there is nothing after death? No, I can't. But the difference between me and a religious person is a religious person will say, yes, there is, whereas I'm saying, I don't fucking know. And that's the sign of intelligence, too. Knowing your own grasp of how things work in the world. These religious person aren't experts in science. They haven't studied the inner workings of the cosmos and come to the conclusion that there's a God and an afterlife. No, they just believe it because it's what they were told. Just like, why do religious people never realize the fact that if you're born in the Middle East, we're in Muslim land, there's a good chance you're going to grow up to be a Muslim. If you're born in Western white Christian land and you're raised by a Christian family, there's a good chance you're going to be a Christian. So here's another reason why religion is fucking bullshit, because depending on where you live in the planet, around in these geological areas, these different countries, determines who you believe in your magical God when you grow up. Just like I find that people who live in families, homes where they have, like, you maybe have a home that's a sports fan and they love the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's a good chance that those kids are going to grow up Maple Leafs fans. If you live in a home where your parents and your family all are Chevy guys, there's a good chance that your kids are going to grow up and they're going to like the Chevy instead of Fords. And that's all it is. It's just conditioning. It's what we grew up and raised and taught to believe. Same with religion. So Christians will say, oh, the belief in Allah is wrong and Muslim belief is wrong, and the Muslims will fight against the Christians, say your religion's wrong. But they're both fucking wrong. They're both ridiculous. And think of all the blood and death and stifling of innovation has been resulted in this belief system. That's why I'm a militant atheist. I can't stand this shit. And it feeds people false hope when we should be focusing on real tasks like fixing the current structure we're living in, because there is no do-overs. This is it. So having that information access is truly shaping us, and we're leaving this old way of thinking behind. Now, I do believe that we're going to outbreed and outgrow religion and government. As an atheist, an anarchist, I can sit back and feel pretty comfortable with my conscience, knowing that, yeah, I get up and I do these podcasts and I do activism, I do anything I could possibly do to try and move society into this direction of individual freedom, to peace, prosperity, to populating the stars. I do what I can, but I also sleep very well at night knowing that it's pretty much an inevitability that we move in this direction. Because these beliefs in government and religion both are flawed, and they're doomed to fail. Because the facts and evidence don't back them up. The facts and evidence do back up my beliefs. My beliefs live in reality. Theirs do not. So it's only a matter of time before everyone is anarchists and atheists. I just wish the process was faster, and that's why I do my activism, to try and speed up that process. Because I'd rather see us get a global planet of atheists and anarchists in the next 50 years than the next 100 years. The more times that these archaic systems of government and religion exist on our planet, the more pain and suffering result in their existences. The more people get caged for victimless crimes from government, the more people get hung and killed in Saudi Arabia for being an atheist. So I want to get rid of this shit as fast as possible. And why I get on these podcasts and sometimes may seem a little bit animated or passionate or come across as frustrated or angry with people in society, it's only because I want this shit to hurry up. And I've always been ahead of the curve and the bandwagon to trends. So I'm just like, get on these podcasts. I'm like, come on, people, wake the fuck up. But I also got to check myself sometimes and realize that, listen, no matter what, we're moving towards this. It's going to happen. So that makes me feel really good. And that's my little piece of optimism for people who listen to these podcasts. Because, some of my podcasts can seem a little doom and gloomy all the time. Sorry about that, mic cut out. So as I was saying, my podcast may seem a little depressing at times. But it's only because I'm trying to shake people out of this conditioning, to try and move this movement faster than its current rate of speed is. And I am an optimist. I always look at the cup half full. And I do believe, because there's 7 billion of us, and no matter how much destruction the elites try to to do, that this information is going to get out there, and science and logic and facts will reign over irrational beliefs, because history and the track record of history has shown us this. We no longer believe in things like kings and queens and slavery and these old archaic forms of way of life, because information has taught us that these way of lives are immoral and wrong, and we're slowly moving towards a more individual, freedom-based society and way of life. So I believe it's inevitable. I just am trying to speed up the process. Although there is a potentiality that this process could end with more or less bloodshed, and that's also what I try and do in my activism. Because these old people that have these belief systems and cling to them and cling to their power, they're not going to go down without a fight. They're not going to want to just give up their power. And the closer they do get to their deathbeds, I think they're going to lash out more, because they got less and less to lose because they're closer to death. So it's why I feel they're ramping up in the gun control grabbing, and ramping up the wars, and ramping up the funding the terrorists and allowing terrorists to commit terrorist attacks, and ramping up the religious fanatic, and ramping up the PC culture. All that is just to because they know that their way of thinking is falling to the wayside very soon. And if they don't come to these conclusions and stop this information from getting out there now, that they're going to be outbred and outbeaten, and these ideas are going to get out there. So I'm going to wrap this podcast up now, about a half hour, not as long as the other one, but I got some stuff to do. Dogs barking, so I'm going to end it now. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Speak out against religion. Don't believe in this false prophet stuff. Hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. And make sure to share the videos, get them out there, and speak out against government, speak out against religion, and all these archaic forms of control. Like I said, Merry Christmas. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Share the podcast. Leave some donation, Bitcoin if you want, in the wallet in the description down below. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.